She had always lived surrounded by luxury until a betrayal within her own family changed her destiny. Sold as part of a deal, she finds herself a prisoner of a powerful and mysterious man. But what seemed like a game of interests soon turns into a fight for freedom and justice. Welcome to the channel. Before you begin, please like and subscribe so we can continue creating stories like this one. The fog covered the Hudson Bridge like a ghostly cloak on that winter morning in New York. The gray sky framed the historic downtown, where old buildings contrasted with modern skyscrapers. Victoria Mitchell hurried her pace, her high heels echoing against the damp pavement as she headed toward the imposing Blackwell construction building, where she had worked for almost 15 years. Inside her purse, her cell phone vibrated. It was Nathan, her boyfriend, sending an encouraging message for the important meeting that morning. Victoria smiled discreetly. At 42, she finally saw a possibility for change in her career. After years as executive assistant to Mr. Walter Blackwell, the owner of the construction company, she had a chance to rise to the position of administrative director. "Good morning, Ms. Victoria," greeted the doorman Samuel, opening the tempered glass door. "Good morning, Samuel. Has Mr. Blackwell arrived yet?" "Not yet, ma'am, but Duke is up there in his office." Victoria discreetly rolled her eyes. Duke was the inseparable German shepherd of her boss, an imposing animal with a penetrating gaze that seemed to assess every person who approached its owner. On the 30th floor, Victoria organized the documents on her desk. The proposal she would present at the meeting was the fruit of months of hard work, a revitalization project for the Hudson River waterfront that combined sustainability and profit. It was her chance to prove her worth beyond her assistant duties. "Monica," the floor secretary approached with a cup of coffee. "The board is already in the meeting room. We're just waiting for Mr. Blackwell. He's late." "Again," murmured Victoria, checking the gold watch on her wrist. "You seem tense." "Everything will be fine." Victoria forced a smile but didn't respond. Nobody there knew the pressure she felt. The day before, Mr. Blackwell had made it clear that he didn't consider her proposal promising. "Assistant ideas," he had said with disdain, while stroking Duke's lustrous fur. The animal seemed to smile at her, sharing in its owner's condescension. The Posh elevator announced someone's arrival. The doors opened, revealing Mr. Blackwell, a 75-year-old gentleman with well-trimmed gray hair and an impeccable suit. Duke faithfully followed at his side without a leash, as if he were an extension of his owner himself. "Good morning, Victoria. Have the investors arrived yet?" "Yes, sir. They're waiting in the meeting room." The old businessman adjusted his tie and gave Victoria a penetrating look. "About your project, I've decided that James will present it." The declaration hit Victoria like a bucket of cold water. James Cooper was the junior manager, hired just 8 months ago. Fair 30-year-old young man, fresh out of an elite university, nephew of one of the shareholders. "But Mr. Blackwell, I worked on this project for months and—" "Victoria," he interrupted her, "James has the profile we need to impress investors. Your idea is good, but it needs an appropriate presentation," which meant, between the lines, a man young and well-connected. Victoria felt her face burn, but maintained her composure. Duke observed her with those almost human brown eyes, seeming to capture every spark of her frustration. "As you wish, sir." During the meeting, Victoria observed from the last row as James presented her project as if it were his own. Each slide, each number, each innovative concept that she had developed came out of his lips with unshakable confidence. The investors nodded, impressed. At the end, everyone applauded. Mr. Blackwell smiled proudly, placing his hand on James's shoulder. "This young talent represents the future of Blackwell Construction." Victoria swallowed the lump in her throat. 15 years of loyalty discarded in a moment. After everyone left the room, she remained seated, staring at the now empty projector screen. Duke entered silently, observing her from the door as if studying her reaction. "What are you looking at?" she murmured to the animal. "Are you going to judge me too?" That afternoon, the New York sky darkened prematurely, announcing a storm. Victoria was finalizing reports at her desk when Mr. Blackwell appeared at her door. "Victoria, I need you to accompany me tomorrow morning to visit the Riverside property, 7 o'clock at the cable-stayed bridge." Wouldn't that be James's job now? She couldn't contain the acidity in her voice. The old businessman frowned. "Don't confuse things. James is the new face of the company, but you're still my assistant. Or are you thinking of giving up after so much time?" The question hung in the air, loaded with meanings. Victoria knew what was at stake. Her job, her mortgage, her mother's health treatment. Everything depended on that salary. "I'll be there." "Sir?" When he left, Victoria remained motionless for a few moments. 15 years of dedication, sleepless nights, sacrificed weekends, stolen ideas. And now, another humiliation. Something inside her was changing, a silent and profound transformation that not even she fully understood. Duke appeared again at the door, staring at her with his attentive eyes. For an instant, Victoria had the disturbing sensation that the animal could read her darkest thoughts, those that were beginning to form, in the depths of her mind, thoughts about what a world without Walter Blackwell would be like. "Stop looking at me like that," she whispered, more to herself than to the dog. The storm finally broke over the city, whipping the office windows. Victoria stared at the cable-stayed bridge in the distance, partially visible through the curtain of rain, and a chill ran down her spine. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock, she and the old man would be alone on the bridge, surrounded by the morning fog of New York. Duke tilted his head, still watching her. And for a moment, Victoria swore there was understanding in those canine eyes. The alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning, pulling Victoria from a restless sleep. Throughout the night, disturbing dreams involving the cable-stayed bridge and Duke's penetrating gaze had haunted her rest. She got up with a heavy body, as if carrying an invisible burden. The apartment in Gramercy Park was silent. Victoria prepared a strong coffee while observing the fog that covered New York through the window, particularly dense that morning. Perfect for hiding secrets, she thought, and immediately pushed the idea away, frightened by the direction of her own thoughts. "Control yourself, Victoria," she murmured to herself. Her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from her mother, Mrs. Eleanor, reminding her to pick up the new medications at the pharmacy. The photo of the 78-year-old lady smiled on the screen, reminding Victoria of the responsibilities that bound her to that humiliating job. The treatment for rheumatoid arthritis wasn't covered by health insurance, and expenses increased each month. Before leaving, Victoria observed her reflection in the mirror. Her brown eyes revealed a fatigue that went beyond the physical, aware of the soul accumulated over years of small injustices. The navy blue suit, always impeccable, was her armor against the world. She adjusted the pearl necklace she had received from her father before he passed away, seeking strength in memories. At 6:40, Victoria parked near the Brooklyn Bridge, a postcard of the city. The imposing structure rose over the East River, partially shrouded in the morning fog. Few cars transited at that hour, making the place almost deserted, perfect for a private conversation. Or for something more. "Stop it!" she reprimanded herself again, gripping the steering wheel tightly. A black car approached, parking a few meters ahead. Victoria recognized Mr. Blackwell's Mercedes. To her surprise, Duke wasn't with him. That was a rarity. The old businessman rarely went anywhere without his faithful companion. "Good morning, Victoria," he said as he got out of the car, leaning slightly on a silver cane, a new accessory that betrayed the advance of age. Duke stayed. "Home today. He's a bit indisposed." Victoria nodded, feeling an inexplicable relief at not having to face the animal's scrutinizing gaze. "Have the engineers arrived at the property yet?" she asked, trying to maintain a professional tone. "We're meeting them at 8. I wanted to talk with you first, alone." A chill ran down Victoria's spine. What could be so important to justify that meeting on the bridge before business hours? "Let's walk a bit," he continued, pointing to the pedestrian walkway that accompanied the side of the bridge. "The doctor said I need to exercise these old legs. They walked in silence for a few minutes, the cold wind cutting their faces. The city was gradually waking up, but from that elevated point everything seemed distant, like another world. "Victoria, I'm retiring," Mr. Blackwell announced abruptly, stopping by the railing to contemplate the river below. The declaration caught Victoria by surprise. Despite being 75 years old, the businessman had never shown intention of leaving the business. "The board is already aware. The transition will begin next month." "And who will take your place?" she asked, trying to control the tremor in her voice. Mr. Blackwell smiled, a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. "James Cooper." The board was unanimous in the choice. The world seemed to slow down. Victoria felt the blood pulse in her temples with a silent fury. 15 years. 15 years of dedication thrown away to favor a newcomer connected to the right people. "I understand your frustration," he continued, misinterpreting her silence. "That's why I wanted to talk in private. You'll receive a generous severance for your years of service. And of course you can continue as James's assistant if you wish." The proposal was a final humiliation, a slap in the face disguised as kindness. Victoria looked at the river below, its dark waters flowing inexorably, like the time she had wasted in that company. "After everything I've done for the construction company," her voice came out strangled, "all the projects I developed." "Don't be ungrateful, Victoria," his tone hardened. "I gave you opportunities many would desire, paid well, offered stability, but I never thought you had the profile to lead. Your place was always in the background, supporting those who have the vision." Each word was a stab. Victoria felt something break inside her, a dam of emotions contained for years. "My place?" she repeated, her voice now strangely calm. "My place was always to be your shadow, isn't it? The efficient assistant who resolves everything but never receives the credit. The woman too competent to be noticed, but not enough to be promoted." Mr. Blackwell frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Don't dramatize, Victoria. Business is business. Feelings have no place in the corporate world." "How convenient," she retorted, taking a step in his direction. "Feelings don't matter when they're mine, but your privileges and prejudices are called strategic decisions." The old businessman leaned over the railing, visibly disturbed by the unexpected reaction. His cane slipped, falling between the railing bars toward the waters below. "Look what you've done," he exclaimed, trying to stretch to reach the cane, which had gotten caught on a protrusion a few meters below. Victoria observed the scene with a strange disconnection. A forbidden thought crossed her mind. It would be so easy. A small push and all her problems would disappear. James wouldn't have enough experience to lead alone. The board might reconsider. Her career, her projects, everything could be saved. Her hands rose almost of their own volition, hovering centimeters from the old man's back, who continued leaning over the railing. A second, maybe two, and everything would be resolved. But then a bark cut through the air. Victoria turned abruptly, her heart racing. There, a few meters away, was Duke, panting as if he had run a great distance. His intelligent eyes fixed on her hands still extended toward his master's back. "Duke?" Mr. Blackwell straightened up, surprised. "How did you get here, boy?" The dog approached, positioning himself protectively between his owner and Victoria. He wasn't growling, wasn't showing his teeth, but there was something in his gaze that made Victoria step back, as if she had been caught in the act of committing a crime. "He must have escaped from home and followed us by scent," suggested Mr. Blackwell, caressing the animal's head. "He's always been very attached to me." Victoria tried to smile, but her lips only trembled. The moment had passed, but the terrifying sensation of what she had almost done remained, like a poison, in her blood. And Duke continued to observe her, passive, like a silent witness to her darkest thoughts. At the Blackwell construction office, the day passed with unusual tension. After the encounter on the bridge, Victoria avoided looking directly at Duke, who remained lying in the corner of Mr. Blackwell's office, his attentive eyes following each movement of the assistant. "The transition documents are ready for review." "Mr. Blackwell," said Victoria, placing a folder on her boss's desk, maintaining a calculated distance from the dog. "Excellent," replied the businessman, without raising his eyes from the contracts he was analyzing. "James will be here at 4 to discuss the official announcement." Victoria nodded mechanically, even knowing he wasn't observing her. Somehow the mention of James's name now provoked a physical reaction of aversion in her, a slight tremor in her hands, breathing momentarily suspended. When she turned to leave, she met Duke's penetrating gaze. The German shepherd rose in a fluid movement and walked up to her, stopping centimeters from her feet. Victoria froze, a drop of sweat running down her temple. "He likes you," commented Mr. Blackwell, finally raising his eyes. "Strange, considering how much we argued this morning." Victoria forced a smile. "Animals have their own intuition." "Yes, and his rarely fails," responded the old man with an enigmatic expression. "Duke has always known how to read people better than I have." The rest of the day was an exercise in self-control. Victoria immersed herself in work, trying to ignore the constant sensation of being observed. Each time she raised her eyes, she found Duke at some point in the office, always vigilant. At 4 o'clock sharp, James arrived for the meeting, displaying the confident smile of someone who already felt like the owner of the place. He wore a custom-made Italian suit and carried a leather portfolio that Victoria recognized as a gift from Mr. Blackwell. "Victoria, darling, could you bring us some coffee?" asked James without even looking at her directly. The condescending treatment made her stomach turn. "Darling?" As if he were already rehearsing to be the boss, distributing orders with false cordiality. "Of course," she responded, maintaining the professional tone she had perfected over the years. In the kitchenette, while preparing the tray, with cups and pot, Victoria felt a presence behind her. Duke was standing in the doorway, silently observing her. Alone with the animal, Victoria felt a shiver run down her spine. "What do you want?" she whispered, knowing it was irrational to talk to a dog as if he could understand her. Duke slightly tilted his head, his intelligent eyes fixed on hers. For an absurd moment, Victoria was certain that the animal perfectly understood her most intimate thoughts, especially that terrible impulse she had felt on the bridge. The phone in her pocket vibrated, breaking the strange impasse. It was a message from Nathan. How was the meeting with the old man? Did you convince him? Victoria had confided in her boyfriend her hopes for a last attempt at promotion, but hadn't mentioned what had really happened on the bridge. While typing an evasive response, Duke approached, touching his nose to her free hand. The gesture, which should be friendly, sent a wave of panic through Victoria's body. She abruptly backed away, dropping a cup that shattered on the floor. "Victoria? Is everything all right in there?" Mr. Blackwell's voice came from the hallway. "Yes, sir, just an accident," she responded, crouching to pick up the pieces. Duke remained close, observing each movement. Victoria noticed something in his behavior that she hadn't perceived before. The animal didn't demonstrate aggressiveness, only a constant vigilance, as if he were guarding a shared secret. In the meeting room, the atmosphere was one of anticipated celebration. Mr. Blackwell and James discussed the company's future plans animatedly, as if she weren't present. Victoria served the coffee and retreated to a corner, assuming the invisible role that had always been destined for her. "The announcement party will be next Friday," declared Mr. Blackwell, consulting his agenda. "All shareholders and main clients will be present." "Perfect," responded James, enthusiastic. "I already have some ideas for my inaugural speech." Victoria observed the scene with an almost physical detachment, as if she were watching a movie about her own life. 15 years of dedication, and her replacement was already planning his inauguration speech after just 8 months in the company. "Victoria will be in charge of all the preparations," continued Mr. Blackwell, giving her a brief look. "Nobody knows the company details better." "Certainly," agreed James with a condescending smile. "Your experience as an assistant will be fundamental to facilitate my adaptation." The word assistant was pronounced with an intonation that made clear the permanent hierarchy that James saw between them. Victoria felt her face warm, but maintained the neutral expression that years of practice had perfected. The meeting extended for another hour, during which Victoria took meticulous notes, while slowly digesting the reality of her future. Continuing. As an assistant, now subordinate to someone who didn't recognize her value, while watching her own projects being implemented under another name. Duke had settled under the meeting table, his eyes occasionally meeting Victoria's, like flashes of consciousness amid the silent humiliation. When it finally ended, James left, promising to send some ideas by email. Victoria began to organize the documents scattered on the table when Mr. Blackwell called her. "Victoria, I need to tell you something." The serious tone of the businessman made her raise her eyes, alert. "Duke behaved strangely today, don't you think?" he asked, caressing the head of the animal, who now rested at his feet. "How so, sir?" "He never leaves home alone. Never. In 7 years, this has never happened." Mr. Blackwell stared at her intensely. "Until today on the bridge." Victoria felt her mouth go dry. "Maybe he missed you," she suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maybe," agreed the old man, thoughtful. "Or maybe he sensed something more. Some danger. Who knows?" The insinuation hung in the air like smoke. Victoria kept her gaze fixed on the documents, unable to face her boss. "Dogs have instincts we don't fully understand," continued Mr. Blackwell, his voice assuming an almost philosophical tone. "Duke always seemed to know things that no one else knew, as if he could read thoughts." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. Would it be possible that Mr. Blackwell suspected something? That he had noticed her moment of weakness on the bridge? "Sir, if you'll allow me, I need to finalize these reports before leaving," she said, desperate to end that disturbing conversation. Of course," he responded, getting up with some difficulty. "Ah, and Victoria," he added, already at the door, "Duke will stay here tonight. The veterinarian will come to examine him early tomorrow, so I thought it best to leave him in the office. Can you feed him before you leave?" The casual request fell like a sentence. Victoria nodded mechanically, while her brain processed the information. She would be alone in the office with Duke. "Don't worry," smiled Mr. Blackwell, erroneously interpreting her hesitation. "He's perfectly trained. He won't give you any problems." When the door closed behind him, Victoria remained motionless for a few minutes. Slowly, her eyes met Duke's, who was watching her from the door like a silent sentinel. "He's just a dog," she repeated mentally. "Just a dog." But in the depths of her soul, Victoria knew she was about to spend the longest night of her life under the watchful eye of the only witness to her darkest moment. The office had plunged into absolute silence after the departure of the last employee. Victoria remained at her desk, pretending to work while postponing the inevitable moment of being completely alone with Duke. The digital clock marked 9:17 p.m., and the rain that had begun to fall on New York transformed the windows into liquid, panels that distorted the city lights. Duke's food bowl remained untouched in the corner of the room. The animal remained seated near the door, as if mounting guard, his eyes occasionally meeting Victoria's through the glass partition. "It's ridiculous to be afraid of a dog," she thought, massaging her temples, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that those canine eyes saw beyond the surface, penetrating the deepest layers of her consciousness. Her cell phone vibrated again. It was Nathan, concerned about her prolonged silence. "Still at the office? Is everything okay?" Victoria typed a quick response, omitting the true reason for her late stay. She had no way of explaining that she was trapped in a strange psychological game with her boss's dog. Deciding to face the situation head-on, she stood up and walked determinedly to Mr. Blackwell's office, where Duke now rested on the Persian rug. The animal raised his head when she entered, his ears alert. "All right, Duke, it's just you and me now," she said aloud, trying to sound confident. "There's no reason for us to continue in this impasse." The German shepherd watched her with that unsettling intelligence that had always disturbed her. Victoria approached the food bowl and gently pushed it toward the animal. "You need to eat. Your owner's orders." Duke remained motionless, just watching her. Victoria sighed, abandoning the attempt to normalize the situation. She walked to the window, observing the illuminated city under the rain. Her reflection in the glass revealed an exhausted woman whose eyes carried the weight of years of contained frustrations. "You know, Duke, she spoke without turning, as if confessing to an old friend. For a moment I really thought about doing it. Just a small push and everything would change. The words escaped her lips before she could contain them, and the sound of them in the empty office caused a strange relief. It was liberating in a way to give voice to that terrible thought that had haunted her throughout the day. But I didn't, she continued, turning to face the animal, and you know that. So why do you keep looking at me like that? As if I were guilty of something. Duke rose slowly and walked to her, stopping at a respectful distance. There was no aggressiveness in his posture, only a kind of attentive curiosity. That's what bothers me about you, you know. Victoria felt unexpected tears spring to her eyes. That look, as if you were always judging, always seeing through people. The office phone rang, startling her. It was late for work calls. Victoria hesitated but answered after the third ring. Hello? Mr. Blackwell's office. Victoria? The familiar voice of Mr. Blackwell sounded from the other end. You're still there? I thought you would have gone home by now. I'm finalizing some reports, sir, she lied, discreetly wiping the tears with her free hand. Is Duke behaving well? Has he eaten? Victoria looked at the untouched bowl and at the animal that was watching her attentively. Not yet, but I'm keeping an eye on him. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Victoria, there's something we should discuss. Mr. Blackwell's tone became more serious. About what happened on the bridge this morning. Victoria's heart accelerated violently. What did he know? What had he perceived? I feel I wasn't fair to you, he continued, surprising her. 15 years of service deserve more than a simple thank you and a severance package. Victoria remained silent, unable to process the change in her boss's attitude. I've been thinking, James needs someone with experience by his side, someone who knows the company, the clients, the internal culture. I'd like to propose that you take the position of Director of Operations, working directly with him. The offer came as a shock, an unexpected light at the end of the tunnel that Victoria had considered completely sealed. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you accept, responded Mr. Blackwell, and she could feel a smile in his voice. We need you, Victoria. The company needs you. After hanging up, Victoria remained motionless, trying to assimilate the turnaround. A promotion. The recognition she had long waited for. It wasn't the presidency, but it was a gigantic step in relation to the position of simple assistant. Duke approached slowly and for the first time gently touched his nose to her hand. The gesture, surprisingly comforting, brought tears to her eyes again. He changed his mind, she whispered, hesitantly stroking the animal's head. Why? The answer would never come, but at that moment Victoria felt that Duke knew much more than any human could understand. Perhaps his presence on the bridge hadn't been to stop her, but to protect both of them from an irreparable mistake. The phone rang again. This time it was Monica, the secretary. Victoria, you won't believe it, exclaimed the colleague, almost breathless. There's a water leak in the digital archive on the 32nd floor. The security system triggered the alarm. You need to authorize maintenance entry right now or we'll lose important documents. I'm on my way, responded Victoria, replacing the receiver. As she hurriedly left the room, she cast a last glance at Duke. Stay here. I'll be back in a few minutes. The 32nd floor was completely dark when Victoria exited the elevator. Only the emergency lights provided minimal brightness in the corridor that led to the digital archive. She walked quickly, using her cell phone flashlight to illuminate the path. The archive room was locked, as would be expected. Victoria entered the security code, but the door didn't open. She tried again, with the same result. Strange, she murmured to herself. At that moment, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned, expecting to find the maintenance team, but the corridor was empty. A chill ran down her spine. Is anyone there? She called, her voice echoing in the empty space. The silence that followed was so absolute that Victoria could hear her own heart beating. She decided to call building security, but discovered there was no cell phone signal on that floor. Even stranger, the elevator now seemed locked, its doors refusing to open when she pressed the button. A metallic noise came from the direction of the service elevator at the other end of the floor. Victoria walked cautiously in that direction, adrenaline running through her veins. She was still halfway there when the emergency lights went out, plunging the floor into total darkness. "What's happening?" she whispered, fear growing like a cold wave. That's when she heard distinctly the sound of canine nails scratching the marble floor. A bark echoed through the dark corridor, followed by a low growl. Victoria froze, her mind processing the information. Duke had followed her steps. "Duke, is that you, boy?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. In response, two bright eyes appeared in the darkness, advancing in her direction. But there was something different about those eyes. They didn't have the calm intelligence that Victoria had observed before. They were wild eyes, almost human in their intensity. Victoria instinctively backed away, her heart hammering against her chest, while those bright eyes approached in the total darkness. It wasn't just fear that paralyzed her, but a strange sensation that she wasn't facing Duke, at least not the Duke she knew. "Who's there?" Her voice trembled, betraying her growing panic. A low, human laugh replaced the growl, sending waves of terror down her spine. The emergency lights flickered twice before turning on again, revealing a human figure where Victoria had thought she saw the German shepherd. "James?" she exclaimed, recognizing Mr. Blackwell's successor, who was smiling with an expression she had never seen before. "Surprise, Victoria," he responded, with a voice that seemed strangely altered. "Were you expecting to find Duke?" Victoria looked around, confused and alarmed. How had James gotten there? Where was the supposed flood? And those eyes she had seen in the darkness? "What's going on?" she demanded, recovering part of her composure. "Monica called me about a leak." James laughed again, a sound that didn't match his habitually polished and contained figure. "Monica is at home with her family, like all normal employees at this hour," he explained, slowly approaching. "As for the leak, well, let's say it was a small, necessary staging." Victoria felt her blood freeze. Everything had been a trap to lure her there. But why? "What do you want, James?" "The same thing I've always wanted," he responded with a disturbing calm. "Total control of Blackwell Construction. Without interference, without old assistants who know too many secrets." Victoria's mind worked frantically, connecting dots that had previously seemed disconnected. "It was you who orchestrated my exclusion from the Hudson River project," she concluded, "and probably convinced Mr. Blackwell to keep me as an assistant all these years." "Brilliant deduction," James applauded with irony. "But no, it wasn't me. I just took advantage of what already existed, the veiled prejudice of an old businessman who would never see a woman as the leader of his empire." He took another step in her direction, and Victoria noticed something strange in his movements, an almost animal fluidity. "What intrigues me is your conversation on the bridge this morning," he continued, studying her reaction. "That moment, when you almost pushed the old man, fascinating to see the limit between thought and action, don't you think?" The shock hit Victoria like a physical blow. James knew about the bridge. Had he been there, observing? "How did you—" "Security cameras," he pointed upward. "They're everywhere in this city, including certain angles of the cable-stayed bridge. The quality isn't the best with that fog, but sufficient to see possibilities." Victoria felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. If James had a recording, even a partial one, of the incident on the bridge. "Blackmail," she whispered, finally understanding. "That's what you want." James smiled, a smile that didn't reach his now strangely bright eyes. "In the semi-darkness, blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as a forced partnership. You return to your position as assistant permanently, and I keep your little secret well guarded." Victoria felt a growing anger override her fear. Her entire professional life, her dreams, her future, being destroyed by an opportunist. "Mr. Blackwell just offered me the position of Director of Operations," she retorted, raising her chin in defiance. "He called me minutes ago." James's expression hardened, a shadow passing over his face. Impossible. The board has already approved my nomination without reservations. Ask him, challenged Victoria. Call him now. For a moment, James's confidence seemed to waver. He pulled his cell phone from his pocket, but before he could make any call, a familiar sound echoed through the corridor. Duke's bark. Both turned simultaneously to the source of the sound. The German Shepherd was standing a few meters away, his body tense like a spring ready to release, his eyes fixed on James. "What is that damn dog doing here?" hissed James, taking a step back. Victoria noticed something she had never noticed before. James was afraid of Duke, a visceral, primitive fear. "Looks like you have an admirer," she commented, feeling a strange calm envelop her in the presence of the animal. Duke advanced a few steps, a low growl emanating from his throat. James continued backing up until he pressed against the corridor wall. "Get that animal away from me," he ordered, his voice losing its previous arrogance. "He's not under my command," responded Victoria, with a tranquility that surprised herself. "Duke has always done what he thought was right." As if understanding her words, the German Shepherd continued advancing toward James, who now seemed truly terrified. "This is madness," he murmured, blindly groping the wall for an exit. "It's just a dog, it can't—" His words were interrupted by the noise of the elevator doors opening. Mr. Blackwell emerged, accompanied by 2 building security guards. "What's happening here?" demanded the old businessman, his gaze alternating between Victoria, James, and Duke, who now sat calmly as if his mission had been accomplished. "Mr. Blackwell," James tried to quickly compose himself, "good that you're here. I was just explaining to Victoria about the company restructuring. At 10 at night on an empty floor and with the emergency lights?" questioned Mr. Blackwell, the distrust evident in his voice. "Duke escaped again. It seems he has a special talent for finding peculiar situations." Victoria observed the interaction with renewed clarity. James was trying to maintain his professional facade, but there was something in his eyes that betrayed him. Fear, frustration, and something else. Something almost wild. "Duke found this on your desk, James," continued Mr. Blackwell, extending a flash drive. "My secretary has strict orders to keep all transition documents under rigorous control. Would you like to explain to me how this ended up with you?" James's face visibly paled. "There must have been some mistake. It wasn't the only strange detail," interrupted Mr. Blackwell. "The files were accessed remotely. Confidential documents about clients, contracts under negotiation, financial evaluations, all under your login during times when you were supposedly in external meetings." Understanding hit Victoria like lightning. James wasn't just trying to take over the presidency, he was selling information, possibly to competitors. Duke approached Mr. Blackwell, sitting at his side like a silent guardian. The old businessman absently stroked the animal's head, his eyes never leaving James. "I hired an independent audit this afternoon," he revealed, "after receiving certain concerns from Duke." Victoria couldn't contain a small, incredulous smile. Mr. Blackwell talked about the dog as if he were a business advisor. "This is absurd," protested James, but his voice betrayed his nervousness. "Our dog can't—" "Duke has exceptional instincts for people," cut in Mr. Blackwell. "He never trusted you since the first day. I should have paid more attention." The security guards approached James, who now seemed completely defeated. "The company lawyers will be in touch," informed Mr. Blackwell with professional coldness. "Until then, you are strictly prohibited from accessing any Blackwell construction system or facility." While James was escorted out, Victoria remained motionless, trying to process everything that had happened. Mr. Blackwell turned to her, his countenance softening. "I apologize for the incident, Victoria. It seems we were all deceived by James." "All except Duke," she responded, looking at the animal that now approached her without any hostility. Mr. Blackwell smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "Duke has always had a special talent for seeing people's true nature. It was he who alerted me about you, you know?" Victoria felt her heart accelerate again. "About me?" "Yes," confirmed the old businessman. "When I returned to the office after our meeting on the bridge, he was restless, barking at your desk, at your projects. That's when I realized what I had been wasting all these years, your talent, your dedication. Duke approached closer, gently touching his nose to Victoria's hand. This time, she didn't back away. On the contrary, she crouched down to be at the same level as the animal and looked into his eyes, those eyes that had intimidated her for so long. "Thank you," she whispered to the German Shepherd, knowing it was crazy to thank a dog, but feeling that he understood. 3 months later, the office of the Executive Director of Blackwell Construction was buzzing with activity. The Hudson River Revitalization Project had been unanimously approved by the board and environmental agencies, with Victoria personally leading the negotiations. Mr. Blackwell had partially retired, remaining only as chairman of the board, while Victoria had assumed the executive directorship of the company. James, as they later discovered, had been negotiating confidential information with competitors for months, preparing the ground for his final coup. "Meeting in 5 minutes, Ms. Victoria," warned Monica, now her personal assistant. "I'll be there," she responded, finishing reviewing some documents. A familiar bark caught her attention. Duke entered her office, followed by Mr. Blackwell, who now visited the company only occasionally. "I came to pick up this old friend," explained the businessman, smiling. He insisted on making a visit today. Victoria smiled, bending down to pet the German Shepherd, who wagged his tail happily. "You know, for a long time I thought he didn't like me," she commented. "Now I realize he was just observing me, waiting for me to discover my true value." Mr. Blackwell nodded thoughtfully. "Duke has always seen beyond appearances. He saw in you what took me years to recognize." Victoria cast a final glance at the animal before heading to the meeting room. In those canine eyes, there was no longer judgment or vigilance, only a quiet wisdom and a loyalty that transcended words. On the bridge on that foggy morning, she had been on the edge of an abyss, not just physical but moral. Duke hadn't just prevented her from committing a terrible act. He had saved her from losing herself. And as she walked through the corridors that now responded to her leadership, Victoria understood that sometimes we need different eyes to see who we really are, even if those eyes belong to a German Shepherd, with a special talent for seeing beyond human shadows. Dear listeners, we hope that Victoria and Duke's story has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it here, clicking to your left. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and human relationships, and sometimes canine ones too. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're eager to read your comments about this incredible connection between a determined woman and an extraordinary dog who saw beyond appearances.